The Roman Empire was one of the most extraordinary and long-lasting political and cultural entities in human history, stretching across continents, reshaping the ancient world, and leaving a legacy that still echoes in modern language, law, architecture, and governance. Its story begins not with emperors and legions, but with a small settlement on the banks of the Tiber River, a cluster of villages inhabited by farmers, shepherds, and artisans. These early Romans lived in a patchwork of cultures and languages, influenced by their Etruscan neighbors to the north and the Greek colonies scattered across southern Italy. In these humble beginnings lay the seeds of an empire that would one day stretch from the windswept moors of Britannia to the sun-baked deserts of Egypt, from the towering cliffs of Hispania to the fertile valleys of the Near East. Long before Rome became an empire, it was a kingdom. According to legend, Rome was founded in 753 BCE by the twin brothers Romulus and Remus, abandoned as infants and raised by a she-wolf until they went on to build a city. Historians debate the veracity of such tales, but they reflect the values early Romans cherished: strength, resilience, and an unyielding will to define their destiny. For centuries, Rome was ruled by kings, a period in which the foundations of religion, law, and social structure were laid. The last king, Tarquin the Proud, was overthrown around 509 BCE in a popular uprising, and with his fall came the birth of the Roman Republic, a system of government in which power was held by the people and their elected representatives. The Republic was a complex mix of aristocracy and democracy, where the Senate, composed of elite patricians, wielded great influence while the popular assemblies gave voice to the broader citizenry. Over time, those definitions shifted, with demands from the plebeians, the common people, for greater rights shaping the political landscape. The codification of laws, the struggle of the orders, and the rise of powerful generals all marked this period. During the early and Middle Republic, Rome fought a series of wars that expanded its influence throughout Italy and beyond. The most famous of these were the Punic Wars against Carthage, a powerful city-state in North Africa. The Carthaginian general Hannibal, with his war elephants, famously crossed the Alps to invade Italy and delivered crushing defeats to Roman armies. Yet Rome endured, and in the end, it emerged victorious, destroying Carthage and seizing control of the Western Mediterranean. As Roman power grew, so too did the strain on the Republic's political institutions. Wealth from conquered territories flooded into Rome, enriching the elite and widening the gap between rich and poor. Veteran soldiers who served long campaigns found themselves returning to lands and farms ravaged by war and neglect. Social tensions mounted, fueling the ambitions of charismatic generals like Marius, Sulla, Pompey, and Julius Caesar. These leaders commanded the loyalty of their troops and wielded power that rivaled the state itself. Julius Caesar's crossing of the Rubicon River in 49 BCE, a bold and irrevocable act of rebellion, sparked a civil war that ultimately ended the Republic. In 44 BCE, Caesar was assassinated on the Senate floor, a blow struck by those who hoped to restore Republican liberty, but his death only deepened the chaos. From the tumult of civil war rose Caesar's adopted heir, Octavian, who would become Augustus, the first Roman emperor. In 27 BCE, after defeating his rivals, Augustus consolidated power and inaugurated the Principate, a system in which the emperor held ultimate authority while preserving the outward forms of republican governance. Augustus was a master of political innovation. He restored peace after decades of civil strife, reformed the taxation system, developed networks of roads, established a standing army and the Praetorian Guard, and initiated an ambitious building program that transformed the city of Rome. Under his leadership, the empire began a period known as the Pax Romana, a 2-century span of relative peace and stability that allowed commerce, culture, and infrastructure to flourish. The Pax Romana was a time of prosperity unparalleled in the ancient world. Trade routes crisscrossed the Mediterranean and extended deep into Africa and Asia. Roman roads, engineered with remarkable precision, connected distant provinces to the heart of the empire, facilitating the movement of goods, armies, and ideas. Cities across the empire boasted forums, temples, amphitheaters, and baths, symbols of Roman culture and civic life. In the provinces, local traditions blended with Roman customs, producing a cosmopolitan society that was both diverse and in many ways unified by shared law and language. Latin became the lingua franca of the West, while Greek remained dominant in the East. Roman law, with its emphasis on rights, contracts, and legal procedure, became the foundation for legal systems that endure to this day. Yet beneath the veneer of peace lay tensions that would gradually unravel the empire's fabric. Succession crises, economic disparities, and the sheer scale of governing such vast territories presented constant challenges. The emperors who followed Augustus varied in ability and temperament. Some were enlightened rulers who promoted public works, religious tolerance, and intellectual life. Others were tyrants whose reigns were marked by cruelty and excess. The Julio-Claudian dynasty, for example, saw emperors such as Tiberius, Caligula, and Nero, whose reigns were colored by paranoia, decadence, and political purges. Public discontent simmered, but the empire endured, resilient in part because of its administrative structure and bureaucratic ingenuity. In the 2nd century CE, the empire reached its greatest territorial extent under Emperor Trajan. From the cold highlands of Britain to the rich lands of the Fertile Crescent, Roman legions held sway over millions of people of countless ethnicities and languages. The Mediterranean Sea, which the Romans called Mare Nostrum, or Our Sea, was ringed by Roman ports and dominated by Roman ships. The empire's wealth was immense, derived from agriculture, mining, trade, and tribute from conquered peoples. Scholars, poets, and philosophers flourished in an age that produced accomplishments in literature, engineering, and philosophy that would inspire generations to come. However, the seeds of decline were sown even in this age of prosperity. The empire's borders were constantly under pressure from external forces, tribes and kingdoms that saw opportunity in Roman wealth. The Germanic tribes beyond the Rhine and the Danube, the Parthians, and later the Sassanids in Persia, and nomadic groups from the Eurasian steppes all posed threats that demanded vigilance and military readiness. Economic strains grew as the costs of defense and bureaucracy mounted. Plagues and epidemics reduced the population, weakening agricultural production and diminishing tax revenues. Meanwhile, internal divisions over succession and power politics eroded the cohesion of the imperial administration. By the 3rd century CE, the Roman Empire was caught in a prolonged crisis. A rapid succession of emperors, many installed by the military, created instability. Civil wars broke out, and regional commanders carved out semi-independent realms. The empire split informally into competing power centers, and at one point, the breakaway Gallic Empire and Palmyrene Empire challenged the authority of Rome itself. It was only through the efforts of determined leaders like Aurelian that the empire was temporarily reunited. Yet the underlying pressures remained, prompting reforms that sought to stabilize and reorganize imperial structures. One of the most transformative figures of this period was Emperor Diocletian, who came to power in 284 CE. Recognizing that the empire was too vast to be governed effectively from a single center, Diocletian introduced the Tetrarchy, a system dividing authority among 2 senior emperors and 2 junior co-emperors. This attempt to share power across regions was an acknowledgement of the empire's complexity and the need for more agile governance. Diocletian also reformed taxation, reorganized the army, and strengthened administrative divisions. His reforms slowed the empire's fragmentation, but they also reinforced structural divisions that would shape its future. Shortly after Diocletian's retirement, another monumental figure emerged: Constantine the Great. Constantine's reign marked a turning point not just in political structure, but in the spiritual life of the empire. In 312 CE, on the eve of a decisive battle for control of the Western Empire, Constantine reportedly experienced a vision that led him to adopt the Christian symbol. After his victory, he issued the Edict of Milan in 313 CE, granting religious tolerance to Christians. Christianity, once a persecuted sect, now gained imperial favor. Over the ensuing decades, it spread rapidly throughout the empire, transforming cultural and religious landscapes. Constantine also founded a new imperial capital at Byzantium, later renamed Constantinople, strategically positioned between Europe and Asia. this city would become a bastion of power in the East long after the Western Empire's collapse. Despite these efforts, the empire's western half faced mounting challenges that would culminate in its eventual fall. From the late 4th century onward, waves of migrations and invasions by Gothic, Vandals, Huns, and other tribes tested the limits of Roman defenses. Some groups sought to settle within the empire as foederai, federated allies who provided military service in exchange for land, while others pressed relentlessly for spoils and territory. The sack of Rome by Visigoths under Alaric in 410 CE was a shock to the ancient world, a symbolic rupture that marked the declining power of Western Rome. Later, the Vandals sacked Carthage and plundered Rome again in 455 CE. In 476 CE, the last Roman emperor of the West, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer, an event traditionally marked by historians as the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Yet the end of the Western Empire was not the end of Roman civilization. In the East, the empire persisted as the Byzantine Empire, with Constantinople as its capital. For another 1,000 years, Eastern Romans continued political, cultural, and intellectual traditions rooted in Roman law and governance. Byzantine culture blended Roman institutions with Greek language and Christian theology, producing a unique and enduring civilization. Meanwhile, the legacy of Rome lived on in the lands of the former Western Empire. Germanic kingdoms adopted Roman administrative practices. The Latin language evolved into the Romance languages, and the Catholic Church, centered in Rome, became a powerful institution shaping medieval Europe. The Roman Empire's influence extended far beyond its political boundaries. Roman engineering set standards in construction and infrastructure. Aqueducts channeled water to cities, amphitheaters entertained thousands, and roads linked distant provinces with remarkable efficiency. The legal principles Romans developed, rights of citizens, contractual obligations, property law, became foundations for legal systems in many modern nations. Latin, once the language of Roman law and administration, remains the root of scientific terminology and the official language of institutions like the Roman Catholic Church. Roman art and literature captured the human experience with depth and clarity. Poets like Virgil, Horace, and Ovid gave voice to Roman values and aesthetic ideals. Historians such as Livy, Tacitus, and Suetonius chronicled the triumphs and follies of rulers and citizens alike. Philosophers engaged with Stoicism and other schools of thought, shaping ethical frameworks that endured into the modern age. In the realm of religion, the transformation from a pantheon of gods to a monotheistic faith under Constantine ushered in an era in which Christianity would dominate spiritual life across Europe and beyond. Even today, echoes of Roman civilization are found in modern democracies, with concepts of civic duty, checks and balances, and republican governance tracing roots to Roman political thought. In cities around the world, public buildings evoke Roman architectural motifs, columns, domes, and arches, symbols of strength, order, and permanence. The calendar we use, with months like July and August named for Roman figures Julius Caesar and Augustus, still reflects Rome's imprint on time itself. The story of the Roman Empire is one of extraordinary achievement and profound transformation. It is a tale of how a modest settlement by the Tiber River grew to dominate the ancient world, of how political genius and military might could forge an empire that brought peace and prosperity, but also faced deep social and economic strains, of how ideas about law, citizenship, and governance could outlast the very institution that created them. Its rise and fall remind us of the fragile balance between power and responsibility, ambition and stability. The empire's legacy continues to inspire and challenge us, inviting reflection on what it means to build lasting institutions, to govern diverse peoples, and to define civilization itself.